What have you actually done in your life for you and only you? And it could be getting a driver's license. It could be getting yourself a job that you enjoyed and getting them to realise they have done things for themselves and they've achieved these. You can do the small steps you need to take for you to move forward now, because people are so focused on the here and now, they forget about the amazing things they've achieved before. You've got this amazing job that you never thought you'd get, and you've got it, you've done it, and you've done absolutely brilliant at it. But that seems to all be forgotten about.
Hello and welcome to the Randall Osché Podcast, where honest conversations take the lead. Each week, we sit down with entrepreneurs, artists, thinkers, and change makers to unpack how they got from there to here and what they learned along the way. Real stories, no filters, lessons earned through experience, so you can take what's useful and leave the rest. Whether you're tuning in during your commute, a workout, or while making dinner, we're glad you're here. So take a seat, relax, grab a cup of tea, and join in the conversation. Now, let's get into this week's episode.
Helinka Carr, welcome to the show. For the people that don't know you yet, why don't you go ahead and take a couple moments and introduce yourself?
I'm Helinka Carr and I'm the founder of Unspoken Rosebud. And the reason why I've started this company was I had bowel cancer, which after the treatment and such left me with a stoma and an ostomy. And if you don't know what that is, where you have a bag stuck to your tummy that then has the output coming through your stomach wall, which is dead glamorous, dead sexy. Everybody wants to talk about it. So as you can imagine, it's a taboo subject. And from that, I then created beautiful, sexy lingerie because there wasn't nothing out there that looked pretty or elegant. And I also now mentor people who are struggling with living with this bag.
I appreciate you being here today and talking about the unsexy and unglamorous part of life.
Absolutely.
Let's see here. I want to get into the business of the Unspoken Rosebud. I'm particularly interested in that. And I think for the listeners that have heard me before and the other guests I have had on the podcast before, and one of the things that I know to be true for myself is that oftentimes the obstacle is the path forward, right? And in life, we're presented with difficulties and challenges, but if we are persistent and persevere and work through whatever that challenge is, not every challenge, of course, is weighted the same. That could be an opportunity waiting for us on the other side. And that's just like the mental framing I have for my understanding of the Unspoken Rosebud so far. But let's take a step back. So before cancer, before the Unspoken Rosebud, who were you? Tell us a little bit about yourself before. I think the diagnosis was in 2013.
It was, yes. I used to manage a single men's hostel. So it was homeless men. There were many different rhymes and reasons why they were not in any fixed abode. It was a job that I absolutely loved. I had an absolutely amazing team around me, but it was just a time for me to move on. And then I was soon diagnosed. So that sort of threw lots of spanners in. But I've worked in health and social care with people at the most vulnerable, whether it's mental health, whether it's to do with domestic abuse, or whether it's just life in general with addictions and such. I've worked with people in that field for 25, 30 years. So I've got a good breadth knowledge of how to talk to people, how to interact with them, and how to call people out if needed.
Very life skill.
Yep.
How did you fall into healthcare for the vulnerable?
It's always something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to help people. If anybody said to me when you careers advice and all that kind of thing, what do you want to do? When it was help people, didn't know how to do it or what angle I was going to go into. And it's just over time, I joined an agency and just gained loads and loads of skills from working with different age groups, different companies, different areas, and then just blossomed and helped many people along the way.
Yeah. Very admirable. Very admirable. And we're just starting this conversation now, but your through line to the story of continuing to help people through what your business does. Most of the time these interviews are jump all over the place, so I can't promise that this is going to be chronological, but like we are headed in that direction, yeah, so we're going to see what happens. So that's what you did before. Unexpectedly diagnosed with, I think it was stage 3 bowel cancer in 2013. maybe take me through like that moment in your life of maybe what led up to the moment of being diagnosed, the diagnosis itself, and then we'll spend a bit more time on like post-diagnosis because there's more to it.
Yeah. At the time, I was starting my business up as a healer, as a Reiki master and crystal healing and complementary healing. And my daughter noticed that there were sometimes I was grabbing my side and I didn't think much of it. So she kept saying to me, please go to the doctors. And I went, why? There's no problem. I've just got a bit of a pain in the side, an occasional little bit of rectal bleeding. Nothing much. No massive big sign saying, whoa, get worried. Because she kept nagging me, I eventually did phone the doctor up and said, it's nothing to worry about. I'm getting nagged to death to speak to you. Spoke to her and a round of blood tests, straight in to see the doctor the following day. And it was just like, yeah, you need to have more investigations. She did mention cancer, but it was like, I was 46. Why would I believe I had cancer? Yeah. At the end of the day, if you looked at all of the marketing stuff that was out there, all the information, it was people 65 and above. So I wasn't that old, so why would I believe it was anything like that? And then I had the endoscope, and I met this amazing nurse. He was hilarious, a couple of years younger than me, and he kept saying to me, oh God, you're of the age where they'll shove cameras anywhere they can find an hole. So we'd have a right good banter and joke and whatever else about it. And I'm going, you ain't that bloody far behind me, mate. Crack on. So he explained the process and said, I'll have to take a couple of samples. I think he said 6 samples, and then we'll just see where it all goes. I'm like, no worries. Not a worry or concern at all. And then soon as the camera went into the bowel, the atmosphere just changed. And I didn't notice it at the time because I was interested. I was watching him go where the camera went inside my body and everything else. I just watched it and I thought, oh, this is really interesting. And then when it came to the end, he said, I need to take some samples. I said, yeah, fine. You told me you what. And he said, yeah, I need to take 12. And I went, no, you said 6. So I'm arguing the debate with him. And he's going, no, lovely, this is serious. I have to take 12. And then he had the pleasure of, once he'd done the samples and got me out of the room, saying, I'm really sorry, but it is bowel cancer. It absolutely stunned him. He was flabbergasted. He just went, you're 2 years older than me. I can't believe this. I just said, it happened.
And you said the atmosphere changed. Did you mean like during the examination when they were scoping your bowel? That like there was, so there was like a vibe change in the room from normal course of business to this is serious. You didn't know that at the time, but like looking back on it, what they were seeing. You now know, I guess, what they were seeing.
Absolutely, because like you said, we had the banter and the joke beforehand. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He was taking the mick out of me saying, oh, they're going to shove everything and anything all over. So we had a right good healthy banter and fun. And like I say, once they got, because mine was at the rectal, so it was more or less as you got into the bowel, it was there. And I saw it and it just looked like a soft cauliflower. And I just ignored it. And then it just changed. But then they obviously have to check the rest of the bowel to see if it's popped up anywhere else, but it hadn't. But I felt sorry for him actually because he had to tell me I had it. Nobody else actually said, I suspect you've got bowel cancer. The doctor did say, do you think it's cancer? And I went, why should I think it's cancer?
Yeah, it's an odd question. Professional to ask you. So you get the diagnosis, right? They take the 12 samples. I'm sure they confirmed what they thought they were seeing. Tell me a little bit about the treatment and then how we got to where we're at today. Because I know that's reading the bio that I don't want to say there were some complications, but like unanticipated direction it took.
Yeah. I refused chemotherapy. I just said, there's no way on this earth you could putting that stuff inside me. And then they said, okay. They didn't actually. They got me to go see another practitioner. And I just went, don't matter what you tell me, I'm not having it. Oh, we're only going to give you a right small dose, Daddy. I said, I don't give a flying monkeys what you're planning to do. I ain't doing it. I agreed then to radiotherapy. And that's what's actually damaged the bottom half of my body because they did such an intense zapping of me. It was just buggered it up, to be honest. So I lost control of my bowel, which you just don't expect that when you're 46 for crying out loud. You get 2 hours having control of it.
So I am the least medical curious person in the world. I'm familiar. I mean, I've heard, I'm not going to say I'm familiar, but like I've heard the terminology chemotherapy. I have an idea of what that would entail. You opted not for chemo. I would love to understand like your thought process around that a little bit. And then you said radiotherapy is what you opted for, which I don't think I've ever heard of. So maybe just cover a little bit about like your thought process about not going the chemotherapy route and then the route you did take. and what that was.
Over in the UK, you have both. You have chemotherapy and radiotherapy. That's their standard. The gold standard is to actually cut the cancer out, and then they either follow you up with the radiotherapy and chemo, or they do it beforehand. And I'd seen so many people who have had chemotherapy, and it just absolutely annihilates your body. But I can understand why they do it, but I wasn't having it done. I just thought, no. But unfortunately, I hadn't done enough research into radiotherapy. So that is, it's like when you have an X-ray, but obviously way intense. So the thing that really got me the most, which is really strange, is that before the radiotherapy, they actually tattoo you. So that every time they give you radiotherapy, they hit the same spot every time, which I found that, well, when you're marking my body, that really upset me, to be honest. All the rest of it I could get handled, but I think it just threw me off. But the radiotherapy was just intensive, like X-rays, just really intensive. I had, 5 of those? But by the end of them, then there were back-to-back days. I couldn't walk. I struggled to walk out of the place. But I just said, that's all I'll have. I'm not, and obviously the surgery, I said, I'm not having anything else. And I refused.
I've had another podcast guest, Kayla Wright, and she was talking about her, or like how she overcame breast cancer in her journey as well. One of the things I find similar with her story, your story, my limited interaction with medical professionals, and then the stories of just in my life with the people that are close to me, is there seems to be a lack of communication or necessary dialogue between like physicians and patients, right? It's going to be a terrible analogy, but like when you go to the mechanic for your car, right? And you go in for an oil change, but then they happen to notice that, oh, your brakes need replaced, your tires don't have tread on them any longer, and your air filter is clogged, and if you don't change that, it's going to have like other problems in your vehicle, and that expense is going to be greater. And then like they come and tell you, and they communicate that, and you're like, I can afford this, I knew about that, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to trade in the car, etc. I guess that there's a diagnostic that was done, right? And then they tell you, and then you get to tell them what you want to pay for, don't want to pay for, what you want to get done, etc. With medical professionals, I often hear of, in my own experience, and with people like I know, is they don't do, I don't want to say great, but that's putting it too kindly from, again, my experience and the people I know. They do a terrible job of communicating what is, like the diagnosis part, I think they probably get right. But like when they're talking about treatment, like they do a terrible job of like comprehensively explaining, this is what the treatment is, this is what it's going to entail, this is what the journey is going to look like, this is what the potential side effects would be. And if these side effects happen, then these are like the risk mitigation therapies or tactics we can take to minimize or eliminate those, right? Sometimes there's like, for you, there was the chemotherapy option or the radiotherapy option. And you were saying that I didn't do enough research on my own. That's why you go to a doctor, right? Like you're going to the subject matter expert, in my opinion. They should be the ones that are doing the research, synthesizing that in a way, and then communicating to you like pros and cons and positive outcomes and potential like negative consequences of each. But like I think there's in the medical profession, I think that's a significant breakdown. Is that sort of like your analysis? Is that what happened in your journey?
I think because in the UK they have a standard process, and they just don't expect people to say no to them. And I'm not somebody who I'll go along with everything. Yeah. But the reason that I did the radiotherapy wasn't because of the lack of knowledge from the professionals. It was from the family. So I went along with it for them. But I said to them, it was a compromise. I just said out blank, I am not doing chemotherapy. No way. But my surgeon was amazing. I can't complain about him because he would phone me up and say, oh, you're in the hospital today. And sometimes I would be, and he'd say, come along and see me. And he'd see me out of the actual clinic times just to make sure I'd been okay, to make sure I understood what the surgery entailed, to make sure I understood. He didn't actually tell me everything, and I did pull him up on that later, but he said, I had to get you on that table, had to get that out of you. And we deal with the consequences afterwards, because the gold standard is to cut the damn thing out and then let's see what damage happens afterwards. And that's how it is in the UK. Whether that's all over the world and such, I'm not 100% sure.
Well, I think, I mean, again, knock on wood, I haven't had any major medical issues myself, but a few minor things here and there. And I don't necessarily think that I think there's a standard like approach, but I think that the standard operating procedure and the standard of care varies from hospital to hospital, community to community, city to city. I think it's probably common here that if you have cancer, it's bad enough, you get chemotherapy. I think the general population understands that. And I think to your point is that most physicians would assume that their patients would just be like, yeah, I'm going to get chemo to get this out of my body and give me the best chance of survival. However, what does not happen sufficiently enough, in, again, my experience and knowing the people that I know, is the communication of what that means for them, right? What that means to go through the therapy, what that possible side effects would be, the impact of those side effects, permanent or otherwise. I don't think that's sufficient enough. I remember referencing back to Kayla Wright episode, how she prepared for this was to buy a book. And I think I'm an avid reader, and I think you can learn lots from books. But like a book is no replacement for effective communication with your physician, right? It's a supplement to that, but it shouldn't be where you're getting all your information from. Fast forward, so you get the diagnosis in 2013, you opt for the radiotherapy, you have the surgery as well.
Yep.
5 years later, cancer-free, and then you're left with the stoma.
What had happened is, what I agreed with my surgeon was, I would refuse to have, this is my second stoma, I refused to have the first one. I just said out and out no, because my auntie had one and she had no end of trouble with hers. So I thought, I don't want none of that rubbish. But he took his time and he spent an hour or so with me and he said, I need you to go and speak to the stoma nurses. You need to let your bowel recover and repair. And I went, fair enough. So I had the reversal. But unfortunately, due to the treatment as a radiotherapy, it left me incontinent, which after 3 years of that, I just said, I can't live like this. You're just going to have to put the bag on. As much as I hated it, couldn't live as I was living. So I gave it 3 years. I can't say I didn't give it a chance. And I just said, just put the damn thing back on. And he did. He listened to me and did it.
Now, regarding that decision, it's an unfortunate situation to be in, and no one should have to be forced to make it. Such is life. And here we are looking back on that. Are you glad you opted for that?
Absolutely. I've got freedom. I'm not glued to the toilet for, 6-7 hours. My kids used to phone me and check out on him. And I used to say, dash. They knew then not to speak to me for 4 hours because I just couldn't get out of the bathroom for 4 hours. I don't have that now. All right, yeah, I've got this thing stuck to my tummy and sometimes it makes some bloody interesting noises when it's dead quiet and all that kind of thing. But I can do stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, being out of the house is one of the most important things. I hate being in the house. So those 3 years were hard, really hard.
Let's take a quick break from today's episode. If you're enjoying the conversation, take a second to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you're tuning in. We'd really appreciate it. You can also find us on Instagram at Randall Osché. That's RANDALLOSCHE. And check out more at podcast.randallosché.com, including show notes and other resources from today's episode. All right, back to the conversation.
So now you have the stoma and you have the bag on your belly now. That had sparked an idea in you, right? So let's pivot a little bit here to what that idea was.
For me, I'm a matching bra and knicker kind of girl. Don't matter what, it's always got to be matching. So I thought that once I'd had the second stoma, because with the first one, couldn't care less. It was short term, didn't have to think about it. It was just whatever, just get me to the 12 weeks, get the damn thing off me. But after the second one, it was like, okay, then I want pretty stuff. I want pretty things that are going to cover my bag, give me that self-confidence and that self-belief and this build my self-esteem up. But there wasn't nothing out there. I couldn't believe it. I just thought, why do they believe we want the medical model all the time? We all want to feel pretty. We all want to feel elegant. So that then sparked the idea of, right then, if I can't find it, I'll make it. So I did.
And so tell me a little bit about, I checked out the Etsy store, but maybe for the viewers of this, we're going to pop in some pictures of what that is now. But for the audio listeners of this, maybe you could just walk them through to describe what it is that you designed.
What I found is I needed to find some lovely, pretty lace about 7 to 8 inches, so that would be firm enough to hold in place, but with it's 95% cotton jersey within it, on top of it, just to hold it all into place, so that if your stomach got exposed or anybody saw it, all they would see is this beautiful band that run across your stomach. Either, so they've got such a variety of colours. Yes, obviously the black and the white are the most popular ones, but I do have a multitude of other colours. And that way then, it just gives people, a lady's choice. They can wear this, and it also holds your bag in place. So if you're wearing a lovely, elegant dress, you can put this underneath, and it just gives that extra layer of comfort and the extra layer of reassurance that it's all okay. I know having the right underwear on, to me, is more important than what I wear on top, even though no bugger sees it. But I know I've got it on and I feel great for it. And I wanted to give that to people, to ladies as well. Because why should we miss out just because we've got this bag?
Yeah, you shouldn't have to. So it's a band that goes around your belly, 365 degrees, right? And it's about, I'm going to guess, 8 to 12 inches top to bottom, right? And then it's made, I checked out a site, and there's different patterns and different designs, but again, it's not, nothing to me visually says this is like for a medical, I don't want to say remediation for
it's not there. It's not there to hide something. It's there to give people the confidence to just be themselves again. And like you're saying, it's not obvious. It's a medical thing. Like you can go and look at the medical models of the Stoma underwear, the ostomy underwear, and yes, you'd see it and you go, oh, what's under that? But with my stuff, you wouldn't think, oh, what's under that? You think, oh, that's pretty.
Fashion accessory. That's what it is. I guess regardless to me of what it's covering up or what it's there to do, I think you can just categorize it as like a fashion accessory for a portion of the population that has to deal with this circumstance. And I think I think you nailed it. So you had the idea born out of this challenge that you had in your life and your desire to feel pretty and elegant and serve practical purpose. What were maybe some of the first prototypes or first challenges that you had in doing it? And did you do it yourself, or is this something that you outsource?
Totally and absolutely mine. See, one of the things it's really found strange is how the clothing sizes differ so much. I know you could go to some of the cheaper stores and you have to buy your size a little bit bigger than what you would maybe go to a more expensive store. But I had to create my own sizing and to find the most beautiful lace, because there's some absolutely shoddy lace out there. And one of the hardest things at first was to find a good supplier of the cotton jersey, because I didn't want it to be where it was full of nylon, full of spandex and all that kind of stuff. I wanted it to be cotton, because at the end of the day, you want it to where it's on your tummy nicely, but it's breathable. It's not something that's making your stomach sweat, because the thing with having the bag on your stomach, depending on where it's positioned, it can become sore. So if it's quite near the belly button, which mine is, it can get quite sore if it's got a lot of nylon over it, if it's got material that doesn't breathe. So you have to be mindful of the practicalities of why you need certain materials. And that was quite difficult. But once I found these, it's up and running. You know, I make to order. I don't have anybody make them for me. So it's all that personal touch from me, which is always great. And if people say, I love this design, is it possible to have it lined at the back because I don't want my bag to be seen tall? And go, yeah, no problem. So there's that flexibility, because people should feel great. And if I can do that with my lingerie, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And it does do. I get great reviews from it.
When did you start the Unspoken Rosebud?
What were we in at? 2019, because I had to have 2 years of full research to make sure I found the right materials, the right sizing, learn how to make them properly. I could sew anyway beforehand, so that wasn't a problem. I didn't have to learn that. But it was finding the right sewing machines to use, finding the right space to work in. And it takes up a lot of time. I didn't think it would, but blooming heck, it did.
There's 2 truths I know from my own experience and from I forget how many interviews I've done so far, like 34, is that it's always going to be harder than you think. Even if you think it's going to be hard, it's going to be harder than you think, and it's going to take longer than you anticipate. So if this is the 35th interview, like, you're the 35th data point to me that's right. It's always, again, even if you think it's going to be hard, it's going to be harder If you think it's going to take a long time, it's going to take even longer than you think. That's just maybe how life works. So where can people go to find the lingerie that you make?
I have an Etsy shop and I find that platform really good. I have tried many other e-commerce platforms and they're just nowhere near as good as what Etsy is. But yeah, it's on there. It's Unspoken Rosebud, so it's a name that's easily remembered. And the reason why it's called Unspoken Rosebud is just like we said before, who talks about bodily outputs? Nobody. So that's unspoken. And the actual ostomy and stoma looks like a rosebud. And in the medical model, there's quite a lot of people that do call it a rosebud. So it just made sense to me just to use them both.
I think that that's perfect. Tell me a little bit about like why Etsy over other platforms. Why has that worked? I don't have any experience with it, but I'd be curious to know, and maybe some of our listeners would as well, as to like why you prefer Etsy.
Like I say, I went on Amazon and you're just doing market research and see what people were putting up on there. And there was one particular seller and they were selling just the bag covers. It just covered the bag itself. And they just looked hideous. And you could go through, I think I went through 5 or 6 pages and all you got was their stuff and it just looked hideous. And I thought, there's no point whatsoever me going to sell on there because people won't get to my products. It's probably changed now, but it's the time scale with Amazon. I think people expect it to be done instantly, but I don't, I make to order. And with Etsy, it's known as a platform where things are made to order. They are handmade. They are created by sole entrepreneurs. They're not created by big manufacturers and such. And I think it's just got that precedent. I've been on eBay, but everybody wanted to beat the price down. And I just went, if you're not paying the price, then that's it. You're not having it. So I took it off there. And Shopify, it just didn't fit in there. It just didn't fit in there at all. So it was just like, fine, Etsy it is.
Shopify, like you had your own website, or Shopify? I'm not familiar with that either.
Yeah, Shopify is the same as Etsy, as in you have your own shop within the big company and such.
Got it.
But it just, nobody looked on that, no matter how much I promoted it and how much it just didn't resonate with people, but Etsy did. So you stick with what people know and what people work with.
Yeah, where you have success.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So is Unspoken Rosebud a passion project for you? Is it a lifestyle business? Is it something that you do because you want to help others, but you also see like a lucrative financial upside? Like, what do you want to turn it into?
To be fair and honest, obviously I do the laundry, but I also do the therapy and the mentorship with people with a stoma and ostomy. Because to adjust to having this bag stuck to your tummy, yet, like you said before, the medical model, they are there to make you physically well, but they don't deal with the emotional and the psychological and just the whole impact of living with this thing on a day-to-day basis. And the overwhelm and the stress and the anxiety of it is massive. I suppose if you go into a hospital waiting room, and I notice this so often, and you'd see people so stressed and anxious about living with this, but we shouldn't be. We should be living the best life we can. And if I'm stepping in there, as you know, I've worked in health and social care for an awful long time. I don't like to see people suffering. I don't feel that people should be living their best life. And if that's coming to me for some mentoring and some reframing on how they're seeing life, that's just so important. I don't want people not to have the best life. We get one crack at this life and let's make it the best we can. Yeah, we have things thrown at us and yeah, we stumble and fall, but you dust yourself off. Find the people that can help you and then get up and get on.
That's another concept that I spend a lot of time contemplating, and it comes up often on the podcast, is find the people that can help you, right?
Yeah.
So through your journey from diagnosis and the surgery and the therapies to even maybe starting up the business after you got better, what was your support system like or not? Were you in this on your own? Or just talk to me a little bit about that.
To start off with, I did start the business with my daughter because she's a sewer as well. But it just got where she was working as well as, and I wasn't. So it just made sense for me to just take it all on board. Plus, for me, I am a clinical hypnotherapist. I am trained to work with people. And I'm book learn as well as hands-on. And that's what people used to say to me. I love how you work because you think outside the box. You don't just follow a standardized program of works. You'll go, oh, hang on a minute, that didn't quite work. Let's go back and let's have a look. And like I said to you, if I feel that people are not really trying, they're giving you lip service to say, I'll call them out and say, come on, you're paying for this. You've got to work. That's the first thing I say. At the end of the day, this is a journey for both of us, not just me saying, this is what you do. It's like, this is what we do. We work together to get you to move forward, because you've got to leave people with the tools and the capabilities to go on with life. I don't want to be there dependent all their life. That's not what it's about.
When you mentor and work with people that are stuck wherever they're stuck at, maybe they're having a challenge of facing the diagnosis that they had, or maybe they've had like post-surgery complications like you, and you alluded to it in your last response about people get stuck, right? And even when they have somebody like you giving them the roadmap forward or giving them the advice, oftentimes people still remain stuck. I get that life is busy, life is complicated, things are stressful, people have anxieties about different things in life. But it's been my experience that regardless of like scenario or circumstance, there's a lot of people who would rather just stay where they're at, even if that means suffering, than to take forward action or to implement the advice and guidance of somebody like yourself, Helenka. So if that made any sense, have you seen that? And then if so, what do you think are some impediments of people taking action in their own life and implementing the changes or therapies or actions that they need to try to get to the other side of what they're going through?
When you've got people who say they want to move forward, actually just paying you lip service, or they're paying lip service to a family member who's saying to them, do you think you could do this and this? And there's a therapist here who can help, or there's a mentor who could help, but they're not actually doing it for themselves. What I'll often do is I'll say to them, what have you actually done in your life for you and only you? And it could be getting a driver's license. It could be getting yourself a job that you enjoyed, and getting them to realise they have done things for themselves and they've achieved these. And let's be fair, passing your driving test it's a bloody minefield, isn't it? So if you can do that, you can do the small steps you need to take for you to move forward now. Because people are so focused on the here and now, they forget about the amazing things they've achieved before. And like you're saying, you've gone for the job and you've got this amazing job that you never thought you'd get, and you've got it, you've done it, and you've done absolutely brilliant at it. But that seems to all be forgotten about. And sometimes you've got to remind them back of that and say, how was you able to do that? And then find out what they did, pick up their little quirks and their little tips that they've done, and pick up the little words that they've used, and then put those words into what they need to do forward, and just pointing out that you have had difficult times way before this. But difficult is, like you say, is subjective, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it does change in life, and that you understand and that you get. But to pass a driving test now, hands up, I'd fall on my backside. I've got so many bad habits in driving. It's unbelievable. But I persevered and I did it. And that's what you've got to remember. What have you persevered at before, and why and how? Find out what their why was, and then use the why to get them to move forward.
So you would say that at least you don't see it, that there's a general like apathy that most people have, right? It's maybe like they've just lost their way, perhaps, and you try to get them back on the path.
But it's not getting them back, it's them getting themselves back on the path as well.
Yeah.
It's a two-street journey, it's a two-handed journey. It's not just, here's your road, here you go, follow it. It's, we'll do this together. And then what you're taught and what you learn and what you feel and experience and have that pleasure of those small steps you've made to make bigger steps, you take forward, and it folds forward with people. And it's like, how can you do with all those big things? If you've had, like I say, it doesn't have to have been cancer, particularly if you end up with a stoma. You could have had an accident, a car accident or something like that, and you wake up and you've got this thing stuck to you. That's one hell of a shock to wake up to this bag stuck to your stomach. And you could just be focusing purely and absolutely on that, and not looking at the bigger picture and going, what else did you do before? What else could you manage? What else did you overcome? This is achievable. You can overcome it. But why did you overcome those things before? And get that why. Like I said, you've got to find out what drives them.
And what can you do next?
Yeah.
When you get an order, custom order or otherwise, and you work with a client and they receive their lingerie and you receive feedback from them, like, how does that make you feel? How does it make you feel when somebody finds your shop, opens dialogue with you, about this challenge that's similar to yours and you get to deliver something to them, how does that make you feel?
Empowered to realise that there was this gap in the market which nobody else saw. And I saw it and I did something with it, and it has benefited so many people. There's one lady, bless her, she was in her 70s and she lived in the same country as me. So she messaged me and said, how quickly can I have this order through? And I went, where do you live? Like, UK. I said, okay then. I said, I can do it first class post. I can have it out tonight. Is that okay for you? She says, oh yeah. She says, my husband died a couple of years back and I'm off out on my first date with this guy. She says, and I want to make sure I'm ready. She says, I might be 74. She says, but there's plenty of life in me, love. And I thought, how better can you ask than that? You get so many reviews saying how it's empowered them, how it's built up their confidence. And it's just, you can just breathe that bit easier knowing that I have been able to make that impact in somebody else's life.
Yeah.
And it's a positive one. And like I say, and if somebody comes to me and go, I've got this particular size bag or this particular brand of bag and I can't find any covers, I'll say to them, send me the bag over. I will make you what you need. And that then just builds up their confidence. And it's just like, I'm just providing a service, but I know how beneficial they feel, which then makes it worthwhile. So when I'm having my sluggy days, which after radiotherapy and such, you do get sluggy days. And it's just, yeah, it was all worthwhile.
Yeah. Oftentimes, again, in life, the obstacles are the path forward. An unfortunate fact, but I think a fact nonetheless. As we begin to wrap up here, number one, thank you for your time today. This very human and inspiring story. Are you, other than the Etsy shop, and we'll include the link in the show notes and then on the website and such, do you have the shop on any other social handles or anything like that, or just the Etsy one?
I do have an Instagram account, which I will post quite a lot of stuff in there. And I'll also post information in there for people. And it's amazing how many people will come back to me and go, I know what you put on there. It's reliable. And they love that I'm honest and blunt about things, because there's times when, I know it's not exactly the sexiest thing, is sometimes you have mishaps and you can wake up and the bed's just. And so I'll take a video and go, what was I doing at 2:00 this morning? Yada, yada, yada. This bloody load of washing out on the line and whatever else. Yeah. People find that so human. And I think that's so valuable, that to see you as a human as much as we still struggle, even though we're further down the line.
Yeah, I think, just side note on social media aside, everybody usually only puts their best version of themselves online, right? I've always worked out and I've always exercised, and I've been doing it since I was first started playing sports, and however old you are in 7th grade. And through my adult life, mostly I've had ebbs and flows of how fit I was or how strong I was, but it's been a consistent through line. I won't go probably more than a week and a half without working out, but sometimes those moments in time are I'm busier or I'm lazier, but I don't post that, right? I don't post when I'm not motivated and on the couch, and when I'm off my diet. I'm not taking pictures of the pizza and the chips on the coffee table. No, I'm posting the picture of the salmon and the broccoli and the rice on the plate. And recently, the fall for me was really busy with travel and work and some family obligations. But I think right around Christmas, I started a streak for myself of working out every day to get back to what my baseline of physical fitness is. And again, just as an example, I didn't post the previous 3 months of my inactivity. I'm posting that I've gone to the gym, right? I posted short TikTok video every day. I don't really even know how I started doing it. But I think yesterday was day 28 or day 29 of going to the gym, right? I run and then I lift. I alternate days. And again, if somebody were to see that, they'd be like, oh, this is Randall's lifestyle. He does this all the time. But again, what I'm not showing people is when I decide to have the pizza and chips, and when missing the gym one day turns into 2 weeks. And I think social media is both really good and really bad. One, it just gives people access to people, and it gives you access to information, and it creates communities where people might not have communities. But there's also this downside of comparing yourself to others, and comparison is the thief of all joy. But you're only able to compare yourself. One, you shouldn't do that. But if you do that, because we're all humans and we all do that, you're comparing your life and your perspective of how you spend every day against a 30-second clip of what somebody posts for their 24 hours. And I think it can be very dangerous and toxic and concerning if you're not able to have that sort of internal dialogue of this is that person's best 30 seconds in their 24-hour period. I'm not seeing them at their worst. But somebody like you that is human and does talk about, what real life is and looks like, that, again, that's compelling and human. And I can see why you would have an audience because of that.
Thank you. But life is, you've got, like you say, you've got two sides of the coin, so why not share both? Because at the end of the day, when you are being real, that's when you're being more interactive with people, because they don't feel that they've got to be, like you said, in the gym all the time. They can say, look at them go, I can't get off the sofa today. I'm absolutely buggered. And that's fine.
Yeah. I think right now it would give me more anxiety to not go to the gym. For some reason, I have it in my mind that I could do this for 35 days. And I'm like, it is like, today enough though? Am I tired enough to take a rest day? But we'll see what happens. That was just my point. That
I know.
People, even myself, I know that these two worlds exist and I am part of the problem. But I think I guess that's how the game's played sometimes too. A couple questions I always like to ask my guests is most influential book you've ever read.
And remember to bring it with me. It is from a lady called Vivian Joy. And it was The Mindset for a Business. But the thing being with this book was it wasn't just about my business. It was also about what I had experienced as a child and how that was impacting on me now and how that was putting blocks in my life that I didn't realise were in there. And I just like to say, because of this is why I now have got a better understanding on how to unpick when people aren't moving forward. You look back and you ask the right questions to unpick it. But I know it says it's for business, but it hasn't. It's been life-changing because now I know when the blocks are and where and been able to overcome them. And it's such a small, easy read. I'm dyslexic, but I can read. But it's in small, manageable chunks. So that was just an absolute breeze to get through. But it was very thought-provoking and it was very like, okay then. And things that you just hadn't thought about for years just pop up and you go, okay, I need to sort that out. So yeah, it was brilliant.
And
well worth.
The book is The Mindset for Business by Vivian Joy.
Yes.
We'll put it in the show notes. And then the other question I always like to ask is, what's the one piece of advice that you would give your younger self? A little framing here is not necessarily something that some of the times I ask it and people are like, well, I don't regret anything. It's not about regret. It's about like reflection. And as you go through life, hopefully you're learning things, you're adjusting your behavior based on the new inputs and how you move through the world, treating people how you want to be treated. Maybe you weren't doing that before, just more aware. You create boundaries that you didn't have boundaries before, didn't know what boundaries were. So it's about more so reflection than regret. I don't think of it as regret at all. That's just been some guests have framed it to me that way.
I think, to be honest and fair though, it's a case of you just grab life, whatever it throws at you. Yeah, okay, then you deal with it at that moment in time if it's absolutely something horrific, like you say the diagnosis and treatment, or if it's something that's been absolutely amazing, you just look at it and go, but I'm still here, I'm still alive, and I'm still learning. And whilst I'm learning, I'm sharing. And there's always something to learn from within everything that you experience. And yeah, there's going to be times when it is bloody out. There's a slog and a half, but it doesn't last forever. That slog is not there forever. You do get past it all, and you will become out a stronger and better person.
I like that. Overcome, execute, and move forward, and be open to information along the way.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on today that you wanted to make sure we touched on?
No, I think you've covered it all. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
All right. We'll wrap it up today's conversation now. But Helinka Carr, thank you for wanting to be on the podcast and reaching out. Again, this is a place where maybe despite what's in my best interest, that I like to have broad conversations in no niche with people of different backgrounds that have overcome different obstacles. And this is another one of those episodes in my library. Appreciate you coming and sharing your story with us. I'm sure that what motivates me to keep doing this is I don't have an eye on monetization. It would be great if that would happen one day. But the thing that drives me to keep doing this is there's a bunch of personal benefits to me. But as far as the output of having this online and having this the audio version on Spotify and Apple Podcasts is if it just lands on one person's ears, right? If just one person watched the episodes and they're able to take one piece of information or guidance or what part of our conversation and move forward in a different, better direction for them. This time for me, and the effort and money I spend to produce this is time and money and effort well spent in my mind.
Absolutely. And like you say, I might not ever know who I've been able to have that positive effect on, but it's out in the ether, and if it's landed on somebody, then brilliant. Yeah. That's what it's about.
Helinka Carr of the Unspoken Rosebud, thank you so much for being here today, and we'll include all the links that we've talked about today in the show notes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And that wraps up today's conversation on the Randall Osché Podcast. Thanks again to our guest for sharing their time, knowledge, and lessons with us. If the episode brought you any value, the best way to support the show is to follow or subscribe on your favorite platform. That helps us reach more people like you. You can also visit podcast.randallosché.com for blog posts, full transcripts, and other episode resources. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and keep moving forward.